The Unspoken Gift. Bayo had always been a man of his hands. They were the tools of his trade, calloused and strong, the architects of the houses he built, and the fortress he had made of his marriage to Magda. At 36, he carried the weight of his world, not just on his shoulders, but in the sturdy columns of his back. Yet, it was this very foundation that had crumbled beneath him, leaving him with a pain that was both a physical torment and a silent thief. The scaffolding had given way, and with it, a part of him. He had always prided himself on his strength, the kind that built empires from sand and cement, the kind that could hold his wife, Magda, with a fierce and protective tenderness. Now, his strength was a memory, a phantom limb that ached with every movement. The doctor's words, serious lumbar injury, echoed in his mind, but the unspoken truth was far more debilitating. The pain, a sharp, unyielding serpent, coiled at the base of his spine, had stolen not just his ability to lift bricks, but his ability to lift her, to be the man he had always been in the sanctity of their bedroom. For months, their intimacy had been replaced by a careful, almost ritualistic distance. Magda, at 35, was a woman of quiet grace and immense patience. She was the steady earth to his restless fire, the calming presence that had soothed his every storm. She would apply the medicated balm to his back, with a touch so gentle it felt like a prayer, her fingers tracing the knots of tension with an empathy that transcended words. But in the quiet hours of the night, when the house was asleep and the moonlight painted the room in shades of silver, Bayo could feel the unspoken void between them. He saw the flicker of longing in her eyes, a hunger that her love and loyalty could not fully satiate. It was the deepest wound of all, the knowledge that he was failing the one person he was meant to protect and cherish above all else. Magda's 35th birthday was fast approaching, and the thought consumed him. What gift could he give her? He had a good life, a successful business, a beautiful home. He could buy her more jewelry, a bigger car, a new wardrobe filled with the finest Ankara fabrics. He had money, yes, but those gifts felt hollow now, trinkets to decorate a life that felt incomplete. They were things he could buy, but they couldn't fill the chasm that had opened between them. He wanted to give her a gift that would speak to the core of his love, a testament to his gratitude for her unwavering care, a gift that would say, "I see you, and I love all of you." It was a Tuesday afternoon, a day like any other, when the puzzle pieces of his world shifted. He was in his study, trying to make sense of blueprints for a new project. The pain in his back, a dull but constant companion. He heard the whirring of the lawnmower and glanced out the window, a small distraction from his suffering. That's when he saw her. Magda was standing by the window of the living room, her posture rigid, her gaze fixed on something outside. Her back was to him, but the tension in her shoulders was palpable. He watched her for a moment, a fond smile playing on his lips, assuming she was admiring the blooming hibiscus. But then, as he moved closer, he saw it. She was peering through the partially parted blinds, her eyes wide with an intensity he hadn't seen in months. Her hands were gripping the blinds so tightly, her knuckles were white. Following her gaze, Bayo's eyes landed on the gardener, a young man named Tunda, who had been working for them for just a few weeks. Tunda had paused his work, his back to the house, and was in the process of changing his shirt, having taken a break from the relentless sun. For a brief, startling moment, he was in nothing but his work briefs. Bayo saw the sinewy strength of his back, the powerful sweep of his shoulders, and the unmistakable masculine bulge that was impossible to miss. Bayo's breath hitched. A wave of ice and fire swept through him. He saw Magda flinch, as if shocked by her own brazen curiosity. When she heard him approaching, she spun around, her face flushed with a mixture of guilt and embarrassment. "Oh, Bayo," she stammered, her voice a whisper. "I was just checking on the lawn. It looks so neat." She was gone in a flash, leaving the room as if fleeing a crime scene. He stood there alone. The image of Tunda and Magda's startled face burned into his mind. He walked to the window and slowly, deliberately, parted the blinds further. Tunde was back at work, his youthful body moving with a fluid, confident grace that Bayo's own body no longer possessed. Bayo watched him, and the initial sting of jealousy gave way to a deeper, more profound sorrow. He wasn't angry at Magda. He was angry at his own body, his own failing. He understood now. The longing in her eyes wasn't just for him. It was for the feeling of being desired, of being held, of a physical intimacy that was a vital part of who she was. He saw not a betrayal, but a cry for help. Her love for him was an unshakable anchor, but a person could not live on loyalty alone. Her needs were real, a human necessity that his injured body could no longer provide. The realization was a weight heavier than any he had ever lifted, but it also brought a terrible, magnificent clarity. His gift to her couldn't be a material possession. It had to be something that would mend the part of her that he had unwittingly broken. His love for her was not about possession. It was about her happiness, even if that happiness was found in the arms of another. The idea was audacious, terrifying, and the most selfless act he could imagine. He would give her the gift of herself back. Magda's heart still raced from the shame of that afternoon. The fleeting, private moment of temptation felt like a violation of the vows she had held so dear. She loved Bayo, truly and completely. His gentle soul, his unwavering kindness, the way he would hold her hand and tell her, "My world is complete with you." Those things were the pillars of her existence. But the silence in the bedroom, the carefully averted gazes, the nights filled with a longing that felt like a betrayal, had taken their toll. She felt like a ship adrift, tethered to a solid anchor, but with no wind in her sails. So when Bayo presented her with a beautifully wrapped package on the morning of her birthday, she was filled with a mixture of joy and apprehension. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was a card. It was not a birthday card, but a reservation card for a week-long stay at the exclusive Afrotropical Oasis Resort, a place renowned for its tranquility, luxury spa, and breathtaking views of the Atlantic. "Go," he said, his voice soft, his eyes filled with a love that seemed to hold a secret sorrow. "It's your birthday, a week just for you. No work, no worries, just rest and be happy." Magda's protests were brushed aside. "You need this," he insisted. "You've been a rock for me. Now let someone else pamper you for a change." The resort was a paradise. The air, thick with the scent of frangipani and sea salt, felt different. She spent her days walking on the beach, the sand a warm embrace beneath her feet, and her nights watching the stars from her private balcony. It was a week of quiet, of introspection, of trying to reconcile the woman she was with the woman she had become. But the longing remained, a ghost in her heart. On the third day, she booked a deep tissue massage at the spa. She was exhausted, not just from the tension in her muscles, but from the emotional weight she had been carrying. The masseur's name was Tunda. The coincidence made her heart skip a beat. But this man was different. He was older, perhaps in his late 20s, with a quiet confidence and eyes that held a knowing serenity. His hands were not just strong, they were intuitive. He moved with a practiced, almost artistic precision, his touch finding the deepest knots of tension in her back, her shoulders, her soul. The massage was an awakening. It wasn't just a physical relief, it was a conversation without words. His hands spoke of strength, of passion, of a desire that was not coarse or demanding, but gentle and respectful. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Magda felt seen. She felt desirable. The pleasure was a revelation, a wave of sensation that washed away the guilt and the loneliness, replacing it with a dizzying, intoxicating joy. She had forgotten what it felt like to feel this alive, this whole. The week flew by in a blur of massages and long, silent walks with Tunde, the masseur who had become a confidant. He listened to her talk about her life with Bayo, her love and her sorrow, with an empathy that was both comforting and dangerous. By the last day, the desire was a roaring fire. She knew it was wrong, a violation of everything she held dear, but the need was a force of nature. In a moment of unguarded vulnerability, after her final massage, she looked at him, her eyes pleading. "Tunde," she whispered, her voice trembling. I can't go back to that life. It's not fair to Bayo, and it's not fair to me. Can we be lovers? Just for now. Just until I can find myself again." Tunde paused, his face unreadable. He looked at her with a profound sadness, a look that seemed to hold all the weight of a secret he could not share. He shook his head slowly. "I can't, Magda," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am sorry, but I cannot do that." Her heart shattered. The shame, the embarrassment, the crushing rejection, it all came rushing back. She had exposed her most vulnerable self and been refused. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Was I not desirable enough?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his crisp white uniform and pulled out a small, folded card. He placed it in her hands. "Happy birthday, Magda," he said softly, and then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the fragrant air of the spa, the card a heavy weight in her palm. With trembling fingers, she unfolded the card. Her eyes scanned the familiar handwriting, her mind unable to comprehend the words. "Hope you enjoyed it," and at the bottom, a single name, signed with a flourish that was both confident and heartbreakingly familiar. Bayo. The drive home was a fog. Magda held the card in her hand, the words a hammer beating against the walls of her understanding. It wasn't a rejection, it was a revelation. It wasn't an act of infidelity, it was the ultimate act of love. He hadn't sent her away to escape her or to be rid of her. He had sent her away to be fulfilled, to feel joy, to be reminded of her own worth and her own desires. He had seen her need, and in his pain had found a way to meet it, even if it meant sacrificing his own pride, his own conventional notions of marriage. She replayed every moment of the past week, seeing the pieces fall into place. Tunde's knowing eyes, his gentle touch, the empathy with which he had listened to her story. He was a vessel, an instrument of Bayo's love. Bayo, the man she loved with all her heart, had sent another man to do the one thing he could no longer do himself. It was a love so profound, it defied understanding, a sacrifice so complete, it was almost unbearable. When she arrived home, the house was quiet. She found Bayo in his study, sitting in the half-darkness, his face etched with a fear she had never seen before. He saw the card in her hand, and his gaze dropped, unable to meet hers. "Magda," he began, his voice a low, strangled whisper. I I couldn't bear to see you so unhappy. I didn't know what else to do. I thought that maybe you deserve to feel that again. I asked him to be gentle, to be kind to you. Magda walked to him slowly, her own tears blurring her vision. She knelt before his chair and took his face in her hands. Bio, she sobbed, you are the most selfless man I have ever known. How could you? How could you give me away like that? He finally looked at her, his eyes full of a mixture of pain and desperate hope. Because your happiness is my happiness, Magda, he said, his voice cracking. And my love for you is not a cage, it's a key. I just wanted you to be free, even if it was just for a little while. Magda leaned forward and kissed him, not on his lips, but on the forehead, the way she would kiss a child to soothe their fever. It was a kiss of reverence, of gratitude, of a love that had deepened and broadened to encompass a new, breathtaking understanding. She had been seeking pleasure, but he had given her something far greater. He had given her absolution. He had given her the gift of knowing she was loved so completely that her happiness was more important than his pride. From that day on, their marriage was different. The physical intimacy was still a challenge, but the emotional intimacy was boundless. The void was gone, replaced by a profound and unspoken understanding. The gift Bayo had given her was not just a week of pleasure at a resort. It was a gift of sacrificial love, a testament to the fact that their bond was not built on the fleeting pleasures of the flesh, but on the enduring, unshakable foundation of two souls who saw each other completely, loved each other without condition, and were willing to give everything to ensure the other's happiness. And in that, Bayo had found a new, more powerful kind of strength, one that no injury and no distance could ever take away.